Now let's animate the satellite. The satellite starts to come in as the rocket goes off the screen, so let's move our range to start around 5 seconds. Let's turn our satellite on, and if we go back to the beginning, we'll see it's actually in the way of our rocket. Let's use our keyboard shortcut of holding down Alt or Option, and then left bracket. And wherever your current time indicator is the first place this layer will now be visible. Now we're going to rotate the satellite around. Feel free to get creative and animate it however you'd like, but hit R for rotation. And then as we drag that out to the right and left, we notice that this is a pretty cool rotation, but it almost looks like it's lost in space, like a satellite gone wrong. And believe me, Rebelmantics Electronic does not want to show that any of their rockets or satellites could go array. Because they never have. They never have. Just want to make that clear. So what we can do is move the anchor point. Let's undo that. And you could do that two different ways. First, we can use the pan behind anchor point tool. Make sure that's selected on. And then move that anchor point out. And try rotation again. Notice how it's rotating around the anchor point. If I undo that. Another way to do this is to highlight our satellite layer, hit A, and then drag out the X and Y coordinates. And notice this way keeps the anchor point centered, but moves our layer around. So now when we rotate, it goes around the center of the layer. And this can be handy if you want to keep things centered wherever you are. In our case, we can't really see the satellite if we do this. So I'm going to undo that and drag the anchor point out somewhere around the right corner of the composition. Let's work backwards again. We want the rotation to go till around 9 or 10 seconds. And it'll rotate completely off. Make sure you use the stopwatch to create a keyframe there. And then we're going to go back to around 5 seconds and rotate that all the way back. And a keyframe should be created automatically. Now if we hit spacebar here, pretty cool. It looks like it's orbiting something. It looks like how a satellite should look in space. I'm going to use the selection tool, which is V by default, and move it a little bit higher in frame so we can see it a little more clearly as it goes past. And like I said, feel free to adjust it how you like. Because I did that and changed the rotation a little bit further over, so you don't get any glimpse of it before it starts to animate in. So we have both elements animating in. Now let's spruce them up with some additional animations. I'm going to move my ruler back to the first 5 seconds and just deal with the rocket. Now as the rocket's going up, you want to see how powerful and how quickly it's moving. In order to do that, an old animation trick is to add lines or little pieces of debris going past it very quickly that really give you a sense of how fast it's moving. We're going to use a shape layer again, this time the rectangle tool. If you click and hold on the shape layer, you can see all the options. It's important that none of your layers are selected or you'll create a mask on top that layer, which is not what we want to do. Before we create that shape, let's change the fill. Let's change it to a black color so it's easily visible. And click and drag a very thin rectangle. Now this one will be very simple. Let's see how about a second lasts. So if we were working backwards again, we go to about a second, click the stopwatch. On the position attribute, make sure that it's all the way at the bottom. We want the debris to end at the bottom. Go back to 0 seconds and pull it all the way to the top. And let's see how that looks. It's a little slow for me. Let's pull that keyframe over so that lasts only about a half a second. That looks much better. You probably can even pull it a little bit more and adjust it as you'd like. Cool. Great, that's a good start. So I'm going to zoom in with the plus key. Put my current time indicator on that first keyframe and hit Alt or Option left bracket. I'm going to jump to the next one, which is much easier than trying to drag it to the right spot by hitting the K key. Notice if I hit J, I go back to the first one, and then K for the next one. K again, I'll actually jump to a keyframe on another layer. So this just lets you easily jump from keyframe to keyframe throughout the composition. This is where the debris ends, so I want to hit Alt or Option right bracket, and then I can duplicate that layer by hitting Command or Control D. And now if I drag the current time indicator, nothing changed, because both of these layers are happening at the exact same time. If I click and hold the top layer, move it to the right a little bit, now the first one should go, and then the second one right after it. Now normally when we see debris, it doesn't look exactly the same twice in a row, so let's stagger this out a little bit. Just pull it down the timeline so it happens later. And then if we hit the P key to see the position attributes, and then J to jump to the first keyframe, we can move it to the right. But notice when you play it back now it's actually traveling on a diagonal. And if you're wondering why the motion path isn't right on top of it, it's because the anchor point wasn't centered when we started animating. It's just following the path of the anchor point, which is fine for now. If we wanted to, we could change the position of the ending keyframe so that it travels in a nice straight up and down line. But if I undo that, and we're back to where we started after we duplicated it, if you hit the A key, the anchor point, and drag out the X value, we could just move it left or right wherever we want. And this affects both keyframes, so we don't have to change every single keyframe on that layer. Looks like the first shape layer got turned off. Let's turn it back on. So the first one goes past, and then the second one goes past. Let's duplicate that a few more times and change where they appear. Let's have this one go at the very edge. Duplicate again. I'm just staggering these so they're not too close together and they look as natural as possible. Again, I'm going to hit A for anchor point and just move it over to the other side. Command or Control D to duplicate. And this one can actually go right through the rocket. And maybe one more for good measure on the other side. Now let's play that back and see how it looks. Looks like they're moving pretty fast, but I'd like to add something to make it even faster looking. Motion blur. Each layer has a motion blur toggle you can turn on. But when you play back, notice there's still no motion blur. So make sure you highlight all the layers you want, click on motion blur, and then enable motion blur for all layers using this icon. Now when we play it back, it's subtle, but you'll see that now each one is actually blurring as it goes past, which is what the human eye is used to seeing in film, for example. I'm going to highlight each one again and click P, hold down Shift, click and drag to lasso each of the ending keyframes, and just drag them because I'd like each one to go just a bit faster. Let's play that again. Now it seems like the rocket is going even faster. Now you probably gathered so far that I just don't like clutter in my timeline or my project. If we're happy where they are, let's create a pre-comp for these shape layers. I'm going to hold down Shift and select them all. Then go up to Layer and Pre-compose. We want to move all layers into a new composition, and we can name these Debris. Click OK. And now we have that one pre-comp layer, and all the debris is still there and visible. And because I know it ends around 5 seconds, I'm going to make sure the debris layer is highlighted and hit Alt or Option right bracket. This way it's just a visual cue that I know it always ends here. Let's play back our full rocket animation. Exactly what we wanted. The rocket goes from bottom to top. We have the debris to make it seem like it's going even faster. And then the satellite rotates across, looking very natural, thanks to us moving the anchor point.